Hi, I'm Brian. Welcome to Autogefühl. We are here in Spartanburg, South Carolina in the United States at the largest BMW plant anywhere. They can produce up to 450,000 cars a year here, but we're really only interested in one of them. We're here to do the shoot for the X7, but because we're here for that anyway, BMW asked us, would we like to bring the Autogefühl team to come and have a look at the brand new X5 before it launches. We said, we think we can do that. Let's go inside and take a look. So, here it is, the brand new X5. Well, there have been over 2 million of these cars sold since it was first introduced in 1999. This is now the X5 in its 4th iteration. We're going to take a really closer look and show you everything that's changed on this car, what's exciting, what you can look forward to, and most important of all, what we think it's going to drive like. We're going to start today by taking a look at the M version of the X5. That's obviously the sporty, more aggressive one of the two. Now, if you've had a chance to watch our footage of the X7, you'll have seen that that car is big and muscular in every respect. A lot of manufacturers, multiple versions of their SUVs tend to copy the same design language very closely, so I'm really pleased to see that BMW have not done that with the X5. Now, the reason for that is that although this needs to be sporty and aggressive, it isn't massive and it shouldn't look massive either. So we have much more angularity in the design. We still have this enormous bullish grille on the front to let you know that it's arrived, but it's a little bit softer, a little bit more understated. Now, we come to one of the first new features. Look at this, laser headlamps. If you're like me, or I should say if you're as old as me, anytime somebody says laser to you, you can't help but think of James Bond being cut in half in Goldfinger. So there's still a little bit of me that thinks, can I do that to cars in front of me that I don't like? Probably not so much. Standard are going to be LEDs fitted to the front. Next one up is going to be directional LEDs, so they can obviously steer out of the way of any oncoming vehicles and preempt corners for you. This is the top of the line laser lights. I have no idea how they're going to work, but I'm very excited to find out. Being the M version, everything here is supposed to be a lot more sporty and dynamic than the standard model, and you can tell that. Look at these. Now, unfortunately, these are fake air intakes, there's nothing going through here, but stylistically, it pairs very nicely with the front. The way that it's been opened up from the standard design just makes it look bigger, more robust, more ready for action. And that flows right through into the bonnet. Now, you won't notice any significant differences here between this model and the standard one, but the styling works very nicely. The way the car flows through both into the windscreen and up top means that it does manage to make really a nice job of not only looking sporty but also stylish. The side of the car is where we really start to see that M styling come into its own. All of the trims are matching in color, and that really gives the car more emphasis on the road. Look at this. Along with the X7, it's the first of BMW's car to feature up to 22-inch rims. Now, because it is the M series, of course, you're going to want that nice insignia right in the middle. It's a good place to talk about the suspension. That's new on this model too. Standardly, the car's going to come with 4 springs, but you can now for the first time ever get full air. That means air suspension not just on the rear axle, as you could have had with the previous version, but on all 4 wheels. So that's going to produce some really nice alternatives for you. If you go with a sports pack, you can actually choose to configure your suspension however it works for you. So you can either have standard steel throughout or a combination of steel and air. Well, having driven the air yesterday, I think I'd take quite a bit of convincing to go back to steel if I had that as an option, but it is really nice in terms of handling and how it delivers the power. Let's take a look further back and see what happens. So, as you can see, a lot of work has been done, especially with this character line here, To bring down the overall size of the vehicle, this is slightly larger, slightly taller and slightly longer than its predecessor, but only marginally. And visually, it manages to pull off quite a nice trick in that it looks like it's not too big, but at the same time, it appears to be aggressive and powerful on the road. I'm not quite sure how they've managed to do that, but again, I do like the way that the character lines and the styling blends in and pushes it together. You also get the feel of the solidity with this big solid flank, those massive wheels. And on this car, we don't have the chrome trim that we have on the other, and that manages to add to the overall effect of making it look ready for anything. Now we come round to the back of the car, and again, you can really see the stylistic differences back here between the X5 and the X7. Look at the angularity of these lights. A lot of attention to detail has been paid in making these wrap around and integrate. And the reason for doing that, it reduces the visual height and also makes the back seem less round. So again, it's making the car look less bulbous and big overall and more stylish and elegant. As we come down, we can see the sport styling on these exhausts. Now you can actually, as an option, get a special sports exhaust if you're going to go with one of the petrol engines. No idea how that sounds, but I'm pretty sure it's going to sound good. Up here we have a split tailgate, both an upper and a lower section, and they're both electric. We're going to take a look at that in just a minute to show you how it works and to see what's different inside the boot. A big part of the popularity of the X5 has always been its utility and ability to be able to cope with lots of very practical use, and this car's no exception. We open up the top, fully electric part, we can see one of the first new features that's integrated into this car. It has a parcel shelf that will automatically open for you when you open the rear and then close when you close the rear. That's a nice touch. It's a small thing, but it's just one less thing you have to worry about if you're trying to get parcels into the back of your car. Now, what happens if you want to get something slightly larger in and you need to get rid of the parcel shelf? That can be pretty bothersome, right? Well, not in this car. Watch this, he said optimistically. There we go. You really don't have to worry about it. It's disappeared right into the floor. And if we do this, we can effortlessly access exactly what we need from the back. That's really a nice function. This is also electric, so if we want a lower loading space, he said again optimistically, there we go, we can easily, that'll be the air suspension adjusting again. If we want a full loading space, it's quick, it's easy, it's simple, it's straightforward, and that really is what you want. Look at that load space. We don't actually have any numbers on that right now, but we will be able to get them later on. Have a look at the back. There's a couple of different innovations here. These are non-slip rubber rails, and when you're loading the car, they sit flush, which means you can slide things in here easily without any catching on the rubber. But when you drive the car, they raise ever so slightly, and what that means is when you put something in the back of this car, it should stay where you left it. That's a nice touch. Underneath here, we have a storage area, and that's really handy for putting tools in. We have some netting if we want to make sure that things stay secured where we like them, and that's on hydraulics, which means it just works. At launch, you're only going to be able to get the X5 as a 5-seater. There will be a 7-seat version coming out later on, but that will take a while to be added to the lineup. The same's also true of the engines. At launch, you can have your choice between 2 petrols or 2 diesels. Later on, there will be a plug-in hybrid, but there will not be a fully electric version of the X5 yet. If you want to see one, write to BMW and let them know. In the meantime, there's lots to look forward to. Let's go take a look at the engine. The hood. Now, the first thing to tell you is, as you will have observed before, sometimes we spend quite a long time looking for the catch in order to open the bonnet, but on the X5 there is no catch underneath the bonnet. The bonnet release that you have next to the driver has to be pulled twice, and then it just lifts up. Now, We don't have lots of facts and figures at the time of filming about this engine. We're hoping we'll find a lot more out before we actually publish the clip. So if it looks a little odd going from this to a little bit further information, then hopefully we'll be able to give you the numbers that you want. I would say the first thing to notice about this compartment are these bars here. It's very impressive to see the amount of solidity that's been built into this design. It's clearly intended to be able to take a little bit of a beating when you're driving it around. Look how low the engine sits within the compartment. Everything really has been finished to reinforce the idea that if you want to do any work on this, it's really going to need to go back to BMW. You're not going to be able to do a lot of tinkering there. There's not a huge amount to see here, and that's the way it's supposed to be. But it's a very nice use of the space. The engine looks very well integrated. And as I said, with these bars on top of it, pretty sure it's designed to go where you want it to go. The M series has that aggressive, bolder, more sporty styling. But of course, there are standard styling lines as well. And we can see how that's different here. We take away from those massive fronts on the M series, and we have more in the way of these horizontal lines that make the car look less aggressive and a little bit more sophisticated. Coming through, you can see that the emphasis has been taken away from trying to make the car look big and bold, and we've done that with this chrome strip that runs right the way along. What that does is it compresses the way that you interact visually with the car, and it makes it look less bulky, more elegant as you come through. Now, there are obviously lots of different colours that will be available when the full lineup gets launched, but in the meantime we've been given two to look at today. The white that we already took a look at earlier on is going to be the colour of all the press vehicles, so when we get to do our drive, that's what we'll have. This is the blue, and you can see that it works really well with this car. In contrast to the M, rather than colour matching, again we have black trim, and that's just another visual trick to enable you to really separate the side of the car so it doesn't look so big. But there's nothing that you're going to be able to do about stopping the 22-inch rims from looking big. And here you can see yet another one of the options that you will be able to get. And I think they look pretty fantastic. What do you think? Let's talk about the interior. Well, even though BMW tried to fool us yesterday with their stealth black cloth all over the interior of the X7, we did manage to get a pretty good sense of what the finished product will look and feel like. Here in the X5, we're allowed to take a complete look at the interior, and it's very nice to see how many styling cues have been carried over from the X5's bigger brother, the X7. Sitting in the car, you do genuinely get the feeling that you're in just a slightly smaller, slightly less refined version. So it feels very conservative, stylish, modern, and there's nothing really obtrusive or standing out. The designer told us that it was very important for them when they were looking at how to convey the experience of being inside the X5, that the lighting was something that worked uniformly throughout the car to create a mood. Now, I don't think we can show you today because it's not dark here, but that includes lighting that is specific to the panoramic roof. So the whole car feels like kind of a unified presence when you're in it as a passenger or as a driver. It's quite hard to visualize how that would work, but hopefully we'll get the opportunity to find out when we do a test drive. Now, in terms of your experience as a driver of this car, they really want to emphasize that this should look, feel, and behave like a sports car. Their words. Because of that, the sports steering wheel comes standard whichever car you go for. You can also get it with the M styling if you go with the M series. It looks and feels great. It's really nice and solid. And if our experience of driving the X7 yesterday was anything to go off, then you're going to really enjoy using these steering wheels. They're well put together. They're nicely designed. We have two 12.3-inch screens here, both digital. Now, they're not options. That's what the car comes with, whichever model you go with. The only thing that is optional, interesting, is gesture communication. That doesn't come as standard. but you can have that. They were very keen to point out to us this is not the final version of the software we're looking at here, so that's going to be a little more tweaked and developed before this car is available to buy later on this year. Now, interiors are a thing that really divide a lot of viewers, especially when it comes to the layout and the feeling. We often read through the comments and are absolutely fascinated by how many people really love something and how many it just doesn't work for. And we know that the manufacturers do listen to that feedback. This is my taste. Okay, I'm an old guy, that's how it is. But I like conservative styling. I don't want anything to be too overblown and overstated. This particular set out for this car, the color choice is not particularly for me, but I get where it's going to. It looks and feels solid, well constructed, the materials are all good and the finishing is nice. And thank you for limiting the amount of shiny black plastic there is in this car for me to leave fingerprints on. Of course, that's the central console. But if you have a look at the way the styling has worked throughout, it's elegant and understated. Look at the way this nice lighting detail runs across the dashboard, and then you can see underneath here as well. As I say, they really have hammered home to us quite how important the interior lighting is on this car for how they wish the driver to interpret it. So I think that's going to be really interesting to take a closer look at. Almost everything on this car looks, feels and resonates with quality and design. We'll come on to that in a little bit, but for now let's focus on the driver's experience. So this is the sports steering wheel, which is standard right across all of the X5s. Again, it's very reminiscent of the X7. Pardon me. The design of the controls is very intuitive and straightforward. They're really easy to use while driving, and the steering wheel feels really good and solid, as it should. Coming across slightly, accessing the controls for heating and cooling is intuitive and straightforward. Once you actually remember where the buttons are, it's no problem to use while driving. As you probably know if you watch lots of our videos, we always have to mess around with the air conditioning in order to not have interference while we're recording sound. And by the time we've gotten used to the X7, it was so simple just to switch it off and on. It's not always that way in every car, so I really did appreciate how much effort has gone into making this easy to use. Now, this is special for the X5. Jonas can have a look just down here. They've been keen to point out that as an option, you can have this. This is a Swarovski? How does that sound, Jonas? Does that sound all right? Okay, Swarovski crystal gear knob. They're keen to point out to us that is the name of the type of crystal, not the manufacturer. I don't know, you know, it's interesting, but it's nice to see that they're thinking about adding unique touches that are going to make you feel special about owning this car. Especially, we don't have the number yet, but considering how much it's likely to cost, I think I'm going to want a crystal gear knob to make me feel good about it. Now, the controls here are all really very easy to use and very straightforward. There are not too many of them, so finding what you want while you're driving is pretty straightforward. I think I might have preferred something like a knob selection for switching between modes. That is a little bit distracting when you're driving down the road and you want to change between, say, Sport and Eco Pro. You kind of do want to look down just to make sure you're pushing the right button, and that is just a touch distracting, but I'm sure you get used to that over time. The parking brake's nice, electronic obviously, very straightforward and easy to use. And here we have controls for the adjustable air suspension. Now, new for this car is that you can get air suspension on both the front and the back axle. Previously on the X5 that was only available on the rear. And here you can adjust the ride height, so that's going to make it much easier for you if you're going off-road, or obviously you can lower the vehicle for a more sporty drive when you want to take full advantage of it. And here we have the off-road pack, so this vehicle has been fitted out with it. We have a jog dial to control the infotainment system with. It's pretty straightforward. It's nothing to get crazily excited about, but at the same time it works very well. So I think that's really the most important feature of any interactive control. Coming a little bit further back, we can see a nice central storage area. Look at this. That is the X5's key. It's enormous, but it is quite flat, so I guess it's going to fit in your pocket easily enough. And I suppose the thinking is that you won't be able to lose it too easily. I don't know, Jonas, do you think you could leave that at an event? Now, we get a little hint of modernity down here, the charge point that we have is a USB-C. I think we're going to start to see this more and more in cars over time, but don't worry, they do understand that our legacy appliances are still going to require USB-A inputs, so we have a charge point for that too. Let's have a talk about the driving situation. Well, BMW will be the first people to tell you the most important thing to them about their cars is the driving experience. They say that you should be able to be put blindfolded into a BMW as a driver and really quickly, within 500 meters, be able to identify it only from the way that it drives. Why would you drive a car blindfolded? That's another question. Now, we did have the experience yesterday of driving around in the X7, and the cockpit feels very similar in the X5, just a little bit smaller. The position is nice. I have a really good view right out onto the road. Obviously this car's covered, so we can't show you that right now. I've got great rear view visibility, and the X7 we didn't mention yesterday, but it had a horrible blind spot right here because the headrest was so significant, and the B-pillar was too. But in the X5, I'm pleased to tell you that I have much better all-round visibility. A lot of that will be specific to me because of my height and where I locate the seat, so please bear that in mind. I'm 5'10" or 178 centimeters, and I have plenty of headroom spare, so it's more than comfortable. There are a wide variety of seats that you can choose from. This is obviously the top end. This is leather. And you can see that it's very adjustable in lots of different ways. This front part extends out. You can change the height. Multiple lumbar support adjustments can be made. And the headrest is, I think, electric in this. Yes, is electric. So as far as the driving experience goes, you're very comfortable. You're very focused on the car, and everything about it is telling you, go and have some fun. For me, interior car design is all about attention to detail, and BMW usually delight in every respect, most of the time. So I really like the way that this has been finished, but there's one thing that I just don't understand. If Jonas swings the camera around, have a look at that. It's hard, it's shiny, it's plastic. Now on the positive side, that's going to be very easy to keep clean. It just doesn't resonate with the rest of the interior to me, and I'm really at a loss to know why it's been finished that way. To contrast with that, if Jonas brings the camera up to the A-pillar, look at this. That's really nicely detailed. This is a microfiber finish, and it runs right through into the roof liner, also microfiber. The material matching is great, and right down here where it meets the dashboard, not only is that line really pleasing to the eye, but the material combination works superbly. So how can we go from that to the door pocket? I don't know. Now this is only the one model, so obviously we'd have to see if this is consistent throughout all of them. And it might seem like a small detail, but if you're using the car every single day, those things kind of grate on you after a while. So I don't know, what do you think? All right, Brian's favorite bit, the glove box check. Can we fit anything more than a snack bar in the glove box? Let's have a look. Well, I have to tell you, not only is that open very pleasing, resonates quality, and if I push down on here, it feels nice and solid. We've got this fiber finish, which is really nice and actually a pretty decent size. I think you can fit more than just the owner's manual in there, a couple of bits and pieces as well. Ah, there we go. It feels nicely built, well made, and the materials are really good. Fortunately, BMW have given us two X5s to have a look at, and the real benefit of that is we have the opportunity to see how the styling works differently in different models. I'm very happy to tell you that those door pockets are not the same on every model. So here you can see a much more traditional rough surface finish plastic. It just looks a lot better, to my way of thinking at least. We've also got this nice wood trim on the center console here, and it's just slightly differently finished. It's a little bit more somber inside here and a little bit more sophisticated. I'm liking the lack of contrast that the other car had between those light and dark fabrics. But I think that's a matter of personal taste. And whatever you go with, you're going to be able to have enough options to decide what you really want. For me, the more serious the better, because that's how I want the drive to be. Let's take a look and see what the experience of the rear seat passengers is like. Well, nice solid noise. Well, obviously this car is designed to take rear seat passengers, so it's going to want to be very comfortable and pleasant back here. And the quality of the materials used in the front has obviously come right through to the back. You have a look at this detailing on the door. It's just very satisfying the way that the styling works. Look at this handle. It feels great to use. It's a nice quality material and it integrates really nicely with the speaker. The armrest is exactly the same. Everything has a flowing feel and the material selection's excellent. But more of that hard plastic down at the door. So if you didn't like it in the front, you won't like it in the back either. But I'm going to stop going on about that. The amount of attention that's been put into providing a nice experience for the rear seat passenger is excellent. We have more USB-C charging points. And here we have a connecting point for what will be the rear entertainment system. We saw that in the X7. Basically, it allows you to control the entertainment from the rear as well as from the front. It really integrates well and it works very nicely. So nice to see that that's been thought of. Got some hard plastic. I would say that that's a rudimentary storage area. It's not really going to look great with stuff in, but you can certainly fit a map back there. In the center console here, we have separate heating and cooling controls, and we know from our experience yesterday, they work very nicely indeed. Slightly further down, a nice storage area, and then at the bottom, a 12-volt charge point. Always handy to have one of those. So let's talk about the seats. They are really very comfortable, and they should be. Look at my headspace here. Not cavernous, but more than enough. I feel very comfortable back here and I could spend a long time. I like the way that I have a good clear view of the road ahead. The passenger's position in the rear is not a second class one. You really feel that you are supposed to be back here and you can enjoy the experience. Pull up privacy blinds, always nice for longer drives. And a nice center console. This is the same design that they put into the X7. It's smart. It does feel a little bit plasticky, but you can't have everything, and that does obviously keep it easier to clean. Again, a lot of plastic here. And more of this plastic here too. So, I don't know. I guess I got kind of mixed feelings about that. It's such a great finish. I'm just not quite sure why they went with the plastic and some of the key elements that you're going to be touching. We mentioned earlier on that we have a crystal gear stick. The reason for that is that you touch this thing all the time, so it resonates for quality. Well, if I'm in the back of this car, I'm going to be touching that a lot, and it just doesn't really reinforce the same feeling. But on the other hand, it is mostly going to be children sitting back here, and I think it'll be absolutely fine for them. We might have to wait a little while before we get to give it a test drive properly. But until then, if you have any comments or questions you'd like answers to, please put them below. Don't forget to subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. And now I'm going to see how this behaves on the test track outside, if nobody's watching. Don't tell anyone.